There's a beautiful morale. We find that the last week's parsha, it ends that Terach and Avram and Lot, who is the grandson of Terach, he was the son of Haran, who's the one who had gone into the kiln and had died in the kiln at Sorek Kaloso. And they had gone from Ur-Kasdim to Haran. Ur-Kasdim was the community where Avram was thrown into the kiln. They went to Haran. And that's where they remained. Then the Torah concludes the previous parsha. Terach lived, his days were 205 years. Terach died in Haran. So Rashi over there explains, Lamed Beis, less pasuk in Parshas Noach. Lachash yotza Avram michoron ubol eretz Canaan hoyu sham yosim shishim shana. Okay, he makes a calculation. The Terach ben shim shana hoyu kashanol Avram. Terach was 70 years old when Avram was born. Harei kuf mem hey leterach kishiyotza Avram michoron. So Terach was 145 years old when Avram left. So if Terach didn't pass away until 210 years, 205 years, what does it speak about his demise? Says that Terach passed away before Avram left Haran. Factually, he was only 145 years old. Because the Torah didn't want it to be public knowledge. V'yomru lokiyim Avram es kibur aviv. People can say that Avram did not observe the mitzvah, he did not honor his father. He left him an old man and he abandoned him. Therefore, the Torah says he died. But how does the Torah say something which is not true? He didn't die. So the reason why the Torah says he died, because people say, Avram, how does he abandon an old father? How does he turn his back on the mitzvah of kibbud of honoring the father? Therefore, it says he died. So people think he died. So Avram wasn't negligent in regard to this mitzvah. But factually, it's a lie. So Rashi cites Chazal, Sharishoim Aptechaim Kriyim Mesid. Because factually, a Rosha, even when he's alive, is considered a mess. He's like he's dead. But Tzadikim Api Sosam Kriyim Chaim. And a tzaddik, even after his passing, he's considered alive. Shenemar, Ubniyo ben Yoyodo ben Ishchayo. It's Gemara in Brochos that a tzaddik, even after he passes away, is considered alive. And a Rosha, even when he's alive, he's considered as if he's dead. So when the Torah tells us, the reason why it says that he died was people shouldn't have a claim against Avram. How does he abandon his old father? So all people know, Terach is no longer alive. But factually, the Torah is saying something that is not true. The Gemara says, the Chazal answered no. It's not a non-truth because he was dead. Because a Rashi, even when he's alive, is considered dead. That's Rashi. Tzaddik Chazal, this is the Medrash. However, there's a Maral. The Maral says something beautiful. He explains that Avram, as we mentioned many times, the Medrash tells us, based on the Pasuk, Viboram, and when he created them, it's a Pasuk in Bereshis, Behiboram is alluding to Avram Avinu, because the letters of Behiboram and the letters of Avram are the same letters. So what does the Torah tell us? That when Avram had left Haran to go to Eretz Yisrael, Lech Lecha, he was considered a new creation. He's a Tchilas Abriya. Even though in the physical sense, biologically, Avram was connected to Haran, to Terach, but in reality, in terms of his, at this moment going forward, his level of representation had no relevance to his father. So all intents purposes, there was no connection between Avram and his father. Because Avram, what he became afterwards, his essence, his entity, his innateness was never represented before he came on the scene. So there was no connection between Avram and Terach. This is the Maral of Prague. The Maral in the Gvurus Hashem writes this. So when the Torah says Vayomas Terach B'chorah, for all intents and purposes, it's as if he died because there was no connection from that moment going forward between Avram and his father. So therefore, it's not a non-truth. And it's not because people will say, how does Avram turn his back on his old father and not address the obligation to honor a father? That's firstly. There's seemingly a question. Kibbud Avraham is not one of the Shev Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. It's not one of the 7 Noahide laws. So if it's not one of the 7 Noahide laws, and a child, a non-Jew, has no obligation to honor his father, so what do you mean people will say, how does Avram turn his back on his father and abandon his old father and leave him over? So to conceal the fact that he was alive, it says he passed away, he died, because a Russia, even in his lifetime, is considered mess. What do people say? I mean, the world itself is so holy that they observe this mode of baby, although they're not obligated. The answer is factually, still, there's certain mitzvos, although they're not obligated, and they're not obligated, they're called mitzvah sichlios, that even if the Torah would have said them, it's expected because any rational, ethical, moral person has a certain ethical, moral understandings of appropriate behavior. As the Mishnah tells us in Bava Metzia, that if a person finds the lost article of his father and a stranger, his father's lost article to return takes precedence over a third party's. Why? Because your father, the level of gratitude and indebtedness you have to your father is more than a stranger. Because your father brought you into existence, and every opportunity you have of life is only due to your father bring you into existence. So therefore, even though as an obligation, it's not an obligation, so-called a Torah obligation, although it's not one of the 7 Noahides laws, but appropriate behavior, moral and ethical behaviors, a child should be dedicated to the care of his parent. So if Avraham leaves his father, who's 145 years old, how does it look? How does it reflect on Avraham Avinu? Therefore, the Torah conceals the fact and says, by Yomas Terach, so for all intents and purposes, people believe he died. And the reason why it's not a lie is because Rishon B'chayim Kuriyim Mason. That's going with Chazal. According to the Maral, because there was a total detachment between the two of them. Avram, even morally, ethically, was not doing anything wrong, because Avram himself, in his essence, besides God says, leave your family. And as we'll see later in the portion of Lech Lecho, as long as Lot, who was part of the family, was associated with Avraham Avinu, God did not appear to him. God did not appear to him. It was only once Lot separated, after the disagreement between his shepherds and the shepherds of Lot, only then it says that God came to Avram. But until that moment, Lot being there was an impediment to have that open communication with Avraham Avinu. So Terach, being the father of this family who represented the antithesis of what Avram had become, there had to be that level of detachment. So Avram had no choice but to leave his father, because God says, you must leave your family. And of course, the family meant his father, but you're shirking responsibility. It's not a question. God says, leave, you leave. Because the only reason why you're obligated to honor your father is because God, it's expected. But what does the world have to say about it? The answer is, we have these other answers. Rishon B'chayim Kuriyim Mason, a Rashi, when he's alive, is considered not as if he's not alive, or as the Maral says, because Avram, when he left Haran to go to Canaan, at that moment he was Biboram, he became a new entity. As we mentioned the Medrash a while ago, but I mentioned recently that Avram Avinu is depicted in the Midrash through an allegory as if you have a flask of fragrant perfume in a cemetery. In a cemetery, as regardless of the fragrance of that perfume, nobody's able to benefit from that fragrance because they're all dead. If you want people to benefit, you take it from the dead and put it among the living. Hashem says to Avram that your effectiveness is only among the living. living means in Canaan. In Choron, where you're now, you will not be effective. To make your mark on the world, to change the world, to be able to communicate my presence and to spout monotheism, to make a difference, it's not in Choron. You must detach yourself from your land, your birthplace, and your family. Only once that happens, then you'll be fully effective. And that's the Lech Lecho. Just one moment. Okay. Yaakov had a question whether he was the father, the patriarch was the father of the 12 tribes. When he took the 12 stones on Har Moriah, and it says he took stones from the location, put them on his head before he went to sleep. And when he awoke, he took these stones. All 12 stones were fused into one stone. That was a confirmation that he was going to be the Av, the founding patriarch of the Jewish people. He was going to father the 12 tribes. Avraham Avinu was not qualified. Where do we see this? Because we see there was a degree of impurity in himself, and that's why he fathered Yishmael. What I'm quoting now is at the end of Shabbos. Yitzchak was not fully purged of the impurity. He had Esau. Yaakov, it was mitosa shlema. All his children were tzaddikim. But how did he know that he was pure enough that he should be the founding father of the Jewish people? Because when he took the 12 stones, they were fused into one, that was the indication the 12 are one entity, which is referred to as the Klal Yisrael. So Avraham Avinu, Yaakov Avinu is the Av of Klal Yisrael. As the Av of Klal Yisrael, observing the mitzvahs, although he was not obligated yet, but it was essential for the development, how he would actually establish the Klal Yisrael when he started fathering, when he goes back to Choron, when he goes to the house of Lavan, when he works for his wives. From that moment, when he left Har Moriah, because we find the 14 years he spent in Shem Ve'aver, he was not held accountable for. Alan. The 12 years, because he was way more than 22 years. For those years, he was not held because he studied Torah. But the years that he was in the house of Lavan, those 20, that he was held accountable for, and the time that it took to get back. Because then already he was the Av, he was already classified as the Av, the founding father of Klal Yisrael. At that moment, although he was the obligated kibbur avein, but the observance of all the mitzvahs, although it's pre-Sinai, were essential for the development of the Klal Yisrael. As a result of that, by him not providing and observing the mitzvah kibbur of and aim, honoring his mother and father properly, and because he was delinquent, he was wait 22 years, that itself would have manifested itself as a deficiency in the foundation of Klal Yisrael. As a result of that, therefore, he had to pay the price to be atoned, and that's why measure for measure, Yosef was 22 years separated from his father, and he suffered those 22 years as an atonement for the 22 years that he denied his mother and father kibbur avein.
But Rabbi,
we find the term tells us that when Terach had left or Kasdim to go to Choron, he had taken Avram, Lot ben Beno, Lot the grandson, who was the son of Haran, and Sarai Eshes Avram, and Sarai the wife of Avram. Took all three of them. We find over here, although Hashem had said, leave your family, depart from your family, we find Lot came along. Lot came along. We find that Avram treated Lot with kid gloves. Kid gloves. Even after they had the dispute, the shepherds of Lot were stealing grazing land. What did Avram say to his nephew? If you go to the right, I'll go to the left, vice versa. However, you should know, we're brothers, I'm always there for you. No matter what, I will come and I will protect you and I will save you, regardless of what it takes. He's taken captive by the 4 kings, who are the victors. And Avram goes to battle, and Avram is the victor to save Lot. First of all, who's Lot? Lot is a dishonest man. He acted with a level of ingrateness to his uncle. He became wealthy because of his uncle, and he told his uncle, don't tell me how to live my life. He went to Sodom. Sodom is a location of evil. He's taken captive. And you know something? You're there, stay there. But Avraham was committed to his word, and he left no stone unturned. He saved his life and returned all the possessions and everything else. Why? You say he's a good person. He's a bad man. He proved. And where did he go after he saved him? He went back again to Sodom. And one of the angels who was sent to Avraham had to save Lot in the merit of Avraham. Why is Lot such an important person? Why? In addition, one of the reasons given why we went to Mitzrayim, we went to Egypt as a Jewish people, because when Avraham was the victor over the 4 kings, which king was saved? King of Sodom. What did the king of Sodom say to Avraham Avinu? Give me the people and you take the material possessions, the spoils. Avraham says, I will not take as much as a thread or a bootstrap from you. So there's a claim against Avraham Avinu. Avraham at that moment had the opportunity to bring the community of Sodom under Tachas Kafei Shechina, to convert them to monotheism, because he was the victor. And he let it go, and they became evil, defiant against God, and they were destroyed. So because Avraham passed on this opportunity, one of the reasons given the Gemara why we went to Egypt, Golus Mitzrayim, was because of this. So because Avraham went to save Lot, he saved the Sodom community. And one of the ramifications of that was, because Avraham had this blind spot, we went to Egypt. Lot is only problem, he's trouble. He's trouble from get-go until the very end. Why? And what happened after he was the victor? Avraham was concerned that the only way he was able to bring about this victory, he may have depleted all his merits. And Hashem says, Al tira Avraham, schorcha harbi miot. Avraham, you don't have to be worried that all your merits have been depleted, because you even have more reward. Because the people you destroyed were evil, therefore you were credited for that. But Avraham was worried. But Avraham went to battle, he knew what the cost factor may be. But he went, in either case, he went. Why? For who? For what? That's the question we asked in the past. So we had said that the first person to give his life al Kiddush Hashem was Haran. First person in the history of the world who died to sanctify God's name was Lot's father, Avram's brother. As a result of that, he felt he was obligated to assume the role of father to Lot, no matter what. Whatever should happen, he's responsible for him, regardless of his level of delinquency, of failing as a human being. Didn't make a difference. Because Lot himself is the son of the man who sanctified God's name publicly, and it was public knowledge that Haran went into the kiln, although his intent was to come out of the kiln. It wasn't as Avraham to go to die, and that's why he did not come out of the kiln, one of the reasons. Nevertheless, but factually, he sanctified God's name with his life. And therefore, Lot deserves to be protected and backed to the hilt, and that's why Avraham did what he did. But what happened? We went to Egypt because of Lot, to a degree, because of that level of commitment. He saved the Sodom, and because he had this oversight, by not converting them, we ended up in Egypt.